Welcome to Consulting Mastery, where we help B2B consultants master the business of consulting. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Ahmad. Join us as we explore the art of delivering outstanding client value, earning a higher income, and thriving in today's marketplace. You know my kids play hockey, right?
I have heard this rumor, yes.
Yeah. So we should officially tell our audience, I'm a hockey dad. I have 3 daughters. All 3 play hockey. 2 of them, the older ones, the last one's kind of getting started. 2 of them play competitive hockey. And so what that means is basically from October to March, April, I'm very tired all the time because we're always at games and we're always traveling. We're always at tournaments and all kinds of stuff. So this past weekend, we were at a travel tournament about 3 hours from Toronto, give or take. And my daughter plays in this tournament. It's my eldest daughter. She's 12. And in the quarterfinal game, the game's tied and it goes to overtime. And she gets benched in overtime. So overtime is a 5-minute period where they play 3-on-3. Okay. And whoever scores wins the game. It's pretty important, right? She plays defense out of 6 defensemen on the team. I don't have a female way of saying defenseman. It's a problem in sports. The defense women, I don't know, right? We're going to call them defensemen. Out of 6 defensemen on the team, 4 of them play in overtime. She's not one of them. And she sees herself as one of the better players on the team, certainly among the defense corps. So she's kind of taken aback. I'm taken aback in the stands. Like, why didn't she come over the boards in overtime? Long story short, had a conversation with the coach. There were some things that happened at the end of the game that he wasn't particularly pleased with, decided it was safer to keep her on the bench. And I had a conversation with her. And to me, sports for kids is not about the sport. It's about learning the life lessons that sports can teach you, right? So this is an important learning moment for her. And I asked her how she felt about getting benched, right? And whether she wants to talk to her coach and have a conversation with him. And hesitant and wants me to be involved, and I'm trying to get her to be more independent and whatnot. And I said, listen, either you can wait for your coach to give you feedback. You can wait for them to, pull you aside before a game or after a game or on the bench or at practice and say, hey, I think you need to work on this, or hey, how about this, or hey, let's improve in these areas. You can wait for that and it'll happen, but there's 15 girls on the team. And your coach can't reasonably, give everybody the attention they deserve. So you have to decide, do you want to become a better hockey player? And do you want to take that into your own hands? Or do you want to just wait around and hope your coach gives you feedback? And she says, no, I want to become a better hockey player. I said, well, then what you have to do is take ownership over your own development. Find out why you got benched. Don't wait for him to come to you. Ask him why you got benched. What did you do? How can you learn from that? How can you improve next time? And ultimately what this resulted in, my idea, but her execution, right, is she sent an email to her coaches. There's 3 of them. And the email basically said, this is a 12-year-old. The email basically said, her name, skill development plan 2023-24. And it said, the purpose of this email is to get your feedback on how I can become a better hockey player. And I've identified the 3 main areas that I believe I need to further develop in to become a better player. And I'm going to revisit this list every month. And I'm going to grade myself on a scale of 1 to 10 after every game. And I would like your feedback on whether these are the right areas or whether you see something more important for me to work on. And then she lists the 3 areas of development with some bullet points underneath. And she sends this email. And again, the thing I'm trying to teach her here is ownership. Don't wait around. Structure it. Make the ask. Frame it. Take a stab at the answer. What do you think the 3 areas are? And now what's going to happen, this is fairly fresh, is she's going to have conversations. The coaches are going to notice. They're going to pull her aside at practice. Hey, out of your 3 areas, I think 1 and 2 are really important. Think about it this way. Think about it that way. She's now created a structure for her coaches to engage with her on her key areas of development. Point of the story is, how many of us are taking our own results in our hands and taking ownership of those results versus being reactive and letting feedback or events or circumstances dictate where we go and how we go.
And how much better would the world be if more people went down the path of your daughter? Because we could see this end up in a very different place, right? Where I got benched. I must suck. I hate this game. I quit. I never want to go back. And we're talking about it, and you can sort of imagine people who are listening translating this into preteen angst, but the same exact thing happens with fully formed adults, responsible people with lives and families and businesses every single day, and we watch it happen, right? We have those conversations where the feedback, if we put it in air quotes, that someone has received is, people aren't buying my thing. They don't like what I did or what I do. They don't, they're not responding to my message. Therefore, I must be terrible. The world doesn't need me. I'm going to go back into my, crawl back under my desk, get a job, do the thing that doesn't feel like it's loaded with this kind of risk.
As if you have no agency.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that I think the sports analogy outside of this particular example is a helpful analogy. Y'all are playing a game. Consultants, business owners, it's a game. You have opponents, maybe. You have coaches. There's a scoreboard, right? There's fans watching. People are paying attention. They're keeping track. There's stats. But it's a game ultimately. And, I think a lot of, we're talking to consultants, but I think all business owners are guilty of this to a certain extent. A lot of business owners feel like, they put themselves in situations where they feel like they have no agency and they are merely kites in the wind, right? And the client decides to buy and it's great. And a client decides not to buy and it's terrible. And marketing campaign works and it's great. Marketing campaign fails and it's terrible. And it's just, we have no agency over anything. And we're completely vulnerable and susceptible to the decisions of others.
And let's talk about why. Because if you have started a business, right, if you are creating a consultancy, which presumably if you're listening to us, you are, or you're thinking about, you do see that you're responsible to some degree. But for the sake of your ego, it is much, much, much easier to not fully take on that agency, right? It is much, much easier to blame, to give credit to something external to you when things are not going as well as you would like. Because if you can say, well, it is, A, B, or C out in the world, that means that it wasn't your fault, that you're not, meeting the revenue target or having the impact that you set out to have. And so it's important to recognize that this exists for a good reason, right? It exists because your brain's trying to protect you from taking on full ownership and everything that comes with it. And it's, I think, a good thing to recognize that. It's fine to understand that. The question is, as we get really meta around agency, now what do you do about it, right? How do you move past that thing that's going to happen subconsciously and get to a place where you fully step into the agency that truly does exist for you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner?
And things are never, ever, ever as they seem. The meaning that you assign to events is meaning that you assign to events. It's not necessarily the true characterization of the event. So I'll tell you why she got benched, right? And we had the chat in the car after the game, and she didn't know, but she had her speculations and feelings about it, and they weren't great. Mm-hmm. And I had my speculations about it, and I shared with her why I thought maybe she got benched, and we were both dead wrong. I talked to the coach the next morning, and I asked him, there's a lesson there in having hard conversations. We could speculate all we want, or I could just ask. He's the coach, right? Unfortunately, a nice guy. And he goes, listen, last shift of the third period, she was all over the place. She was missing her defensive assignments. And I thought it was too risky to put her out. And I go, oh, did you see that she got hit with a puck in the arm in that shift? He goes, no, I didn't see that. Yeah. She took a puck in the arm and she froze. And you're right. After that, she was all over the place because she was trying to manage the pain and didn't want to get off the ice. So the whole thing was very explainable. Like he had actually planned, he told me, he had planned on putting her on the second shift in overtime. But after that last shift in the third period, she was all over the place and he didn't know why he changed his plan. Now, the real reason why is because she got hit with the puck and she was hurt. So all the meaning that her and I were assigning to this thing was completely misplaced, right? And the reality of the situation was very different, which, if you want to ask yourself, why do clients not buy? Yeah, refer to our previous episode. But there's many reasons, most of which have nothing to do with you suck. Right? And you're a failure and your offer is no good and you don't know what you're doing. There's so many reasons why they don't buy. And we tend to assign meanings to both that scenario and any other kind of negative outcome that are more often than not, most often, complete figments of our imagination.
Yeah. And, the notion of agency, if we narrow it down to a very specific thing, I mean, what your daughter did was get more information. Like, we're not talking about something, very dramatic that you need to change your entire personality and way of being to do, right? What we're talking about is having the discussion, reaching out, making the connections so that you actually have the information that you need to do the right thing. And if we really stretch your story and the metaphor even farther, also recognize that when you're in pain, you're not going to see things clearly. And, getting hit with a puck is one kind of pain. Looking at your P&L that doesn't look the way you want it to is a different kind of pain. And it's also going to skew how you perceive what's happening. And so the real question here is, how do you take agency to get as close to the facts as is possible for humans to get? Because you can spend a lot of time convincing yourself that the story you are telling yourself is somehow factually correct. And to your point, rarely is that the case until you build a muscle to be able to really validate what's going on.
Then there's a whole other lesson here around trusting the way that things unfold and embracing that as opposed to resisting that. So I would now argue that her getting hit with that puck and her getting benched in overtime is the best thing that will have happened to her this season, because it was the trigger for her to take her own development in her own hands and take ownership of it and take agency of it and steer and shape the conversation around how she can become better. And if this didn't happen, none of that would have been the case. And she'll now improve more as a result. And I think that's the other lesson here for folks is, you could spend a lot of time whining and complaining about why things are the way they are. And that's not going to do a whole lot to change your circumstances. Or you can embrace that things are the way they are for a reason. There's a lesson in that. There's something for you to learn or gain from the current experience, whether that's you lose a deal, a whale client disappears, you're having trouble with your marketing, people aren't responding to your offer, you're getting hammered on budget and price objection, whatever it is, team member leaves. Either you can sit around whine and complain, none of that stuff changes, it's all still true, or you can embrace the circumstances and seek to learn the lessons contained in them and then be better off as a result. And that's a choice.
It's a choice, and let's talk about how to do it, because sometimes, it's possible when I hear you say that I'm like, oh, that's easy for you to say, right? How do I do that? How do I just embrace the thing? And I would argue that this is like anything. It's about, building a muscle. It's about finding a way that, a year from now, when the same thing happens, it's an immediate embracing of the challenge, right? It's an immediate, okay, what's the lesson? But you need to get from here to there. And that's not easy for humans in general. And so I think what I want to throw forward is you just need to create some rigor around this, right? You need to create the space to ask those questions, to ask, okay, like things are not feeling great, or I didn't close that deal I thought I was going to close, or, whatever the hardship is, setting yourself up so that you have, time built in to reflect on that and to give yourself the space to shift from something bad happened to me to hold on a minute. Let's think about what learnings can come out of this and how this helps to make me better. That's what makes all the difference. The fact that you had 3 hours in the car, super helpful, right? Because that's space that's protected for these conversations that you guys have after these games. It was longer this time because you were far, far away. But setting that reaction period, that opportunity to think, reflect, talk through with somebody, whatever that looks like for you, that's the thing that will help you get there. Because when you go through enough reps, when you have learned from, hardship 1 and failure 2 and on and on and on, then it becomes easier to, embrace those challenges in the moment as they come at you.
It also helps to have a nagging father who won't let you lose yourself in your book on the way home and wants to talk about the tournament and what happened the entire ride home.
Yes.
Right. But again, point being, have people in your corner that can help, right? Because this is a tough journey to embark on your own.
Yeah. So I think, for the folks out there who are feeling that they're struggling, right? That are maybe not getting where they need to go. The question is less about looking outward and figuring out, you still need to do this to some degree, but figuring out what are the contributors to what's going on. The real question is, what can I do? And what are the steps that I can take to be better and, to improve my lot in this complicated life that I'm moving through?